Miss Vance, I am going to ask you something outrageous, and I beg you will let me finish before you throw the poker at me. I need you to pretend to be my wife for 11 days. Your Grace has been drinking. Your Grace has been writing letters to a blind old woman for 2 years, said the Duke of Thornwood, and one of them contained a lie, and she arrives on Friday. Ottilie Vance set down the poker. She had in fact picked it up, to mend the schoolroom fire, and he chose to let that pass, and looked at him across the ink-stained table where she taught 19 village pupils their letters 6 days a week. "Sit down," she said. "You are too tall for this room and you are blocking the only light. Now begin at the beginning, and mind you tell it in order." Sylvester Thornwood, 8th of that name, sat down on a form built for a person of 8 and told it in order. 2 winters since, his grandmother had been dying at Ashby Parva at 89, blind these 6 years, with a lung complaint the physicians gave until Lady Day. She had asked him, in a small dry voice, whether he was ever going to marry, and whether she was to go out of the world without knowing that the last Thornwood was not going to be alone in that great cold house. "And I said yes," Sylvester said. "I said, 'I am married, ma'am.' I said it standing at the foot of her bed because she was dying and because there was nothing else in the world I had to give her. I meant it to last 3 weeks. And she recovered. She recovered magnificently. She has had 2 years and she is now in her 92nd year, and she has written to me every week of those 2 years, and I have answered every letter, and in 50 of them there is a wife." He put his hands over his face briefly. "Her name is Anne. She is fond of gardens. She reads aloud badly in my invention, which was a stupid detail to have added, and she does not care for cards." "You gave her a name." "I gave her a name in the 4th letter, and I have loathed myself since the 5th. Ottilie folded her hands. "And on Friday?" "On Friday my grandmother's physician sends her out of town for the last time. She is not going to see another winter, Miss Vance. That is not the physician's being careful. That is Mr. Leyburn telling me plainly in his own hand. She has ordered the traveling chaise to Thornwood, where she was born, and where she means to die, and she has written to me that the one thing she has wanted for 2 years is to sit in a room with my wife and hold her hand." He looked up. "So I may meet her at the door and tell her that the 50 letters were a story I told a dying woman to make her comfortable. Or I may find her a wife by Friday." The schoolmistress of Thornwood village was 25, the orphaned daughter of a naval lieutenant, and possessed of £30 a year, a set of quarterly reports in a hand like copperplate, and no living relation nearer than a cousin in the West. She had come to the parish 4 years ago. In 4 years she had, to the Duke's certain knowledge, refused a subscription from him for the school roof on the grounds that the roof was the parish's business, and he had already given the land, written to the county paper over her own initials to say that the Thornwood footpath had been stopped up illegally, which it had, and told him to his face at the harvest supper, in front of his own tenants, that he was the loneliest man she had ever met and ought to be ashamed of the waste. She had also, when the fever came through the low cottages, kept the school shut for 5 weeks and taught 11 of them in her own kitchen, so their mothers could work. "Why me?" Ottilie said. "Because you are the only woman in this county who has never once wanted anything from me," Sylvester said, "and because my grandmother is blind and very clever, and she will know a fool or a liar inside 2 minutes, and you are neither. And because—" He stopped. Because when I sat down last night to think of who in England could possibly do it, I found I had not thought of anybody else at all, and had not for some hours, and did not wish to." There was a silence in the schoolroom. The fire, unmended, fell in on itself. "There are terms," Ottilie said at last, and he had never in his life been so glad to hear a woman sound businesslike. I will hear yours. You will hear mine. Mine first, said the Duke of Thornwood, for there is only one, and you will not expect it. Money is not. It is not money. He set his hands on the little desk. My condition is this, Miss Vance. From the moment my grandmother comes into that house until the moment she is carried out of it, you will not tell her one single untruth. Not one. Everything you say to that woman must be true, and I mean true in the small things as well as the great. Ottilie stared at him. You are asking me to help you deceive her. I am asking you to let her believe one fact, which is that you are my wife, and it will be the only false thing in the house. Beyond that, nothing. If she asks whether you love me, you will answer honestly, whatever the honest answer is, and I shall stand there and hear it. If she asks how I asked you, you will say that you would rather not tell her, which women are permitted to say. If she asks what you were before, you will say a schoolmistress, because she will ask, and she will smell a governess out of you in a moment and be delighted. His jaw tightened. She is going to die in that house holding somebody's hand. I have already given her one lie. Everything else she gets from us is going to be true, or I will meet her at the door on Friday and confess the whole and take what comes. Ottilie Vance looked at him for a long time. She had gray-green eyes and a way of considering a thing that made a man feel his own arguments being weighed out on a balance. That is a very strange condition, she said, and I did not expect it, and I find I like you better for it than for anything you have done in 4 years. She pulled a sheet of paper toward her and dipped a pen. Now mine. First, separate rooms with a locked door between and the key on my side. Naturally, on my honor. Second, my school does not shut. I shall walk down each morning at 8 and take the little ones until 11, and your grandmother may be told exactly that, since it is true. Agreed. Third, when it is over I take nothing, no gift, no money, no annuity, nothing whatever, and you will not attempt it by any roundabout means, for I shall know, and it would spoil the thing entirely. The pen paused. Fourth, when she is gone and the deception with her, you and I will not pretend afterward that it did not happen. I will not be a person you nod to on the church path. If we cannot be friends after Friday week, I would rather know it now. Madam, said Sylvester, I have wanted to be your friend since the harvest supper, and had no notion how to set about it. She wrote the 4 terms out fair, and signed them, and passed him the pen, and the Duke of Thornwood signed a contract at a schoolroom desk on his knees with his hat under his arm. The chaise came on Friday at 4. He carried his grandmother in himself, because she weighed nothing at all now, and set her in the great chair by the hall fire, and she turned her blind face up and said, Sylvester, where is she? Here, ma'am, said Ottilie Vance, and knelt down and put both hands into the old woman's hands. Sylvester had told her nothing to say. That had been the whole of the bargain, and it was, he discovered, an exquisite torture. To stand on his own hearth with his hands behind his back and no power whatever to prompt. You are cold, his grandmother said. I walked up from the village, ma'am. I keep the school there. I had 19 of them this morning, and one of them has the whooping cough, and I have been arguing with his mother about it since Tuesday. You keep a school. The withered fingers moved over her knuckles. You have chalk in the seam of your thumb, and a burn on this hand that is a flat iron burn. I had one of my own at 18. My mother was furious. Sylvester, you have married a woman who irons her own linen. I have, ma'am. Thank God for it, said the Dowager Duchess of Thornwood. The last 4 they tried to put on you could none of them boil water, and every one of them wanted this house. Girl, sit here where I can hear you. Do you love him? And Sylvester, standing behind the chair with the firelight going over the flags, heard his own heart stop. "That is a great question to put to a woman with her bonnet still on," Ottilie said. "I am 91. I have not the leisure for manners." "Then I shall answer it, ma'am, and he may hear it, which serves him right for standing behind chairs." She took a breath. "I have known your grandson 4 years. I have quarreled with him in print. I have thought about him a great deal oftener than is proper in a woman with £30 a year and no expectations. And when he came to my schoolroom on Tuesday and asked me for something difficult, I found I had said yes before he had finished the sentence, and I have not been able to account for that satisfactorily to myself since." The old woman was quiet a moment. Then she laughed, a dry rustling sound like paper. "Sylvester," she said, "she has not said she loves you." "No, ma'am. She has said something a great deal better. Ring for tea." They had 11 days, and the Duke of Thornwood learned in them how expensive a single lie is, because everything around it had to be built true. His grandmother wanted to know about the West Garden, so on the second morning he walked Ottilie through it in the frost, since she had never seen it and could not be made to say she had. She wanted to know whether Anne read aloud as badly as he had claimed, so Ottilie read to her that evening, and read appallingly, flat as a slate, mispronouncing every French name in the book, and the old woman laughed until she had to be given her drops, and said that at least one thing in his letters had been honest. She wanted to know what he called his wife when there was nobody by. Ottilie hesitated 1/2 second, and Sylvester said, from the window, "Ottilie, that is not Anne." "No, ma'am. Anne was my invention. Her name is Ottilie Vance, and I have been calling her Miss Vance for 4 years like a fool." "Well," said his grandmother comfortably, "at least you have stopped." He called her Ottilie for the remaining 9 days, and by the 4th he had stopped hearing anything else in his head. On the 6th day his Aunt Lady Craddock arrived from town with 2 footmen and a great deal of concern, took one look at the woman pouring tea, and said, "But that is the schoolmistress." The room went cold. Ottilie set down the pot with a steady hand. "Amelia," said the Dowager Duchess of Thornwood from her chair, "have you come to sit with me because I am dying, or to see what is being carried out of the house? You may sit down and be pleasant, or you may go back to town and tell everybody whatever you please. I am past minding, and Sylvester is past minding, and the girl irons her own linen and does not want the plate. Sit down." Lady Craddock sat down. She stayed 4 days, and was, in the end, rather useful with the drops, and cried honestly at the last, and nobody afterward held anything against her. On the 9th day the old woman sent everyone out but Ottilie, and had the door shut, and Sylvester stood in the passage like a schoolboy, and did not eavesdrop, and never afterward learned the whole of what passed. On the 10th she sent for him alone. "Sit where I can reach you." He sat. Her hand came out and closed on his sleeve. "Sylvester, there is no marriage in the register at Ashby Parva, nor at Thornwood, nor anywhere the vicar's wife could discover, and she is a woman of great energy, and I set her on it 2 years ago." The floor of the world went out from under him. "Ma'am, I have known since your 9th letter. I have known for 2 years that my grandson had invented a wife to comfort me, which is the most foolish and the most loving thing anybody has ever done for me, and I have written you 50 letters about a woman we both knew did not exist, and neither of us would stop, because it was the only game left." Her blind face turned toward him. "And then on Friday you brought me a real one, and every single thing she has said to me in 10 days has been true. Do you know how she was that first hour? She could have told me she loved you and I should never have known. She told me she could not account for herself. Nobody lies like that." Sylvester found he had put his head down on the arm of her chair, like a boy of 9. "I set the condition," he said, "so that at least she should not have to lie to you." "You set the condition," said his grandmother, "because you have wanted for 4 years to be told the truth by somebody, and you have found the one woman in England who cannot help doing it." Her fingers moved on his hair. "Now attend to me, for I am going to be tiresome. I do not want a wedding at my bedside. I will not have that girl brought to the point out of pity for an old woman, and if you attempt it I shall say something disgraceful. I have given her my ring, it was my mother's. It is hers. It is not conditional, and she may wear it to the school or sell it for the roof, and she has my leave. But you will not ask her while I am in this house. You will wait until I am buried and she has gone home to her own £30 a year, and nobody can say she was kind to me and got a duke for it. Then you will ask her properly, in daylight, in that appalling little schoolroom, and you will be refused twice before she says yes, because she has more pride than the whole College of Heralds. She died on the 12th day in the morning, with her hand in Ottilie Vance's hand and her grandson's palm flat on the coverlet, having asked, an hour before, for the window to be opened so she could hear the rooks. Ottilie stayed for the funeral. Then she folded up the 11 days as neatly as she folded everything, took nothing out of the house but the ring and her own box, refused the carriage, walked down to the village in the rain, and opened the school on Monday morning at 8. The Duke of Thornwood let her alone for 6 weeks. It was the hardest discipline of his life. Then the county began to talk, as counties do, and what they said was not what he had feared. Lady Craddock, of all people, had gone about town saying that the schoolmistress of Thornwood had nursed the old duchess through her last days, and had taken nothing for it, not so much as a shawl. And the parish, which knew perfectly well that Miss Vance had never once slept under the Duke's roof without a locked door between them, because servants talk, and these servants were fond of her, declined to say anything scandalous at all. He went down to the schoolroom on the first fine day of March, at 11 in the morning, in the full light, with his hat in his hand and no plan whatever. "Miss Vance." "Your Grace has ink on his glove," she said, without looking up. "You have been writing letters again. I hope this time to somebody who exists." "I have been writing to the trustees of the school," Sylvester said. "There is to be a master for the little ones from Michaelmas, and a proper house, and the parish is to pay him out of the land I gave, and you are not to teach 19 pupils in a room with one window for £30 a year for the rest of your life, and none of that is a gift to you, and you may verify every particular with the churchwardens, whom you will find insufferable." Ottilie put down her pen. "And second, I am asking you to marry me, not to hold anybody's hand, not to comfort anybody who is dying. There is no dying woman in this county now, and no lie left in my house, and there is nothing in it for you but a cold, great hall, a man of 41 who did not know how to make a friend until you told him at a harvest supper that he was a waste, and 11 days of my life that I have thought about every hour since." He turned his hat around in his hands. "My grandmother told me you would refuse me twice. I have set aside the whole spring." Ottilie Vance stood up behind her ink-stained table, and he saw that her hands were not steady at all, which after 4 years was the most extraordinary thing he had ever seen. "I shall refuse you once," she said, "for form, consider it done. Now I have a condition, and you will not expect it either." "Name it." "You will never lie to me. Not once, not in 50 letters, not to spare me, not when I am dying and asking you a question you cannot bear to answer truthfully." Her voice cracked on the last of it. "You lied to a woman for 2 years out of love, Sylvester, and it nearly cost you the only person who could have told you the truth. If you are ever tempted to be kind to me in that manner, you will come and stand in front of me and say the true thing, however it hurts." That is my whole price." "You have it," said the Duke of Thornwood, "and I shall begin now, since there is a true thing I have been carrying since Friday the 4th of November. I did not come to that schoolroom, because you were the only woman who wanted nothing from me. I came because I have been in love with you since the harvest supper, and I used my grandmother's dying as an excuse to get an hour of your company, and I am not proud of it, and I would do it again." They were married in the parish church at the end of April, and the school did not shut, because the bride would not hear of it, and the new master did not begin until Michaelmas. She wore the old duchess's ring, which she had never once taken off, and which the vicar's wife, a woman of great energy, identified aloud in the porch to the entire village. Years later, a young cousin of the family, engaged and full of himself, asked the Duke what a man ought to promise a woman when he asks her. "Not comfort," said the Duke of Thornwood. "Any fool can promise comfort. I invented a whole wife once to give an old woman comfort, and it was the nearest I ever came to losing everything. Promise her the truth in the small things. Promise it when it costs you. My wife stood in a hall on the day she met my grandmother and would not say she loved me because it was not yet exactly true, and I have been living on the strength of that one honest hesitation for 22 years.